What if the legendary tale of Swan Lake was rewritten, not with tragedy, but with hope? On his 20th birthday, Prince Kale defies destiny, enters a forbidden forest, and discovers a secret that will change his life forever. A cursed maiden, a vow of love, and a battle against dark magic. This is not the Swan Lake you know. This is the Swan Lake you will never forget. The banners of House Arundel fluttered in the spring wind, gold and silver threads catching the sunlight. Trumpets rang out across the courtyard as servants bustled, courtiers bowed, and well-wishers filled the grand hall. For today was no ordinary day, it was the 20th birthday of Prince Kale, heir to the throne. Kale stood tall beside his mother, Queen Serenia, who wore a crown as cold and flawless as carved ice. To the guests, Kale was the perfect image of a young prince: dark hair, steady eyes, the practiced smile of a nobleman raised for duty. But inside him, a quiet storm raged. When the feasting was done and the wine cups emptied, the queen rose from her throne. Her voice carried across the hall, sharp as a blade. "My son," she declared, "you are now of age. In 1 week's time, we will hold a royal gathering. Noble princesses from every realm will stand before you, and from among them, you must choose your bride. This marriage will bind alliances, strengthen our borders, and secure your future as king." The crowd applauded, voices echoing off the marble pillars. But Kale's stomach sank. A bride chosen like a chess piece, love weighed against politics, his future signed and sealed by names and banners. He lowered his head, hiding the unrest in his eyes. That night, when laughter and music faded into silence, Kale slipped from the castle halls. He wore no crown, only a hunter's cloak. At his side hung not a sword of ceremony but a bow of ashwood, his only true companion. With soft steps he passed through the garden gates, past the walls that had always felt like cages. The forest stretched beyond, dark and forbidden, its trees twisting like the spines of ancient books. No courtier dared tread there, for stories told of enchantments and whispers that led men astray. But Kale's heart urged him forward, hungry for something real, something untouched by courtly schemes. The air grew cooler as he walked. Moonlight draped itself between the branches, silvering moss and stone. He breathed deeply, savoring the silence, the scent of pine and damp earth. Here, no eyes judged him, no voices reminded him of duty. Here, he was not a prince, but simply Kale. He walked for what felt like hours, guided by nothing but instinct. Then, through the trees, he saw it. A clearing where the forest opened onto a vast lake. Its surface gleamed like liquid glass, untouched by wind. Mist curled above it, glowing faintly as though the stars themselves had fallen into its depths. Kale froze, struck by the beauty of the place. He had never seen water so still, so alive with silver light. Something in the lake called to him, a song too soft to hear but too strong to ignore. He stepped closer, heart pounding with wonder and unease. And then, movement. Across the shining surface glided a flock of swans, their feathers catching the moonlight like threads of pearl. They moved in silence, perfect and unbroken, as though the lake itself breathed through them. Kale lifted his bow, instinct whispering of the hunt. But even as his hand trembled on the string, something within him urged caution. These were no ordinary swans. The night had only just begun, and destiny was waiting at the edge of Moonlake. Kale stood at the lake's edge, bow in hand, every muscle taut. The swans glided in a perfect arc, their white wings rippling the silver water. They were too graceful, too deliberate, as if some hidden rhythm guided them. Then, as the moonlight brightened, Kale witnessed the impossible. The swans reached the far shore, and before his eyes, feathers dissolved into shimmering light. Where birds had been, now stood maidens clothed in pale gowns that gleamed like water itself. Their hair spilled down like rivers of night and gold, their faces lit with both sorrow and radiance. Kale lowered his bow at once, breath caught in his throat. He had heard tales of enchantments, but never had he believed them. Among them, one maiden stood apart. She was taller than the rest, her eyes the color of moonlit waters, carrying both gentleness and grief. Even in her silence, she drew Kale as though the world itself had narrowed to the space between them. Before he could stop himself, the words escaped his lips. Who are you? The maiden looked at him, her expression caught between caution and hope. I am Leora, she said softly. We are the daughters of the lake, bound by a curse not of our making. Her voice was like music carried on the wind, fragile yet unyielding. Kale stepped closer, his boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. A curse? He asked, his curiosity burning brighter than his fear. She nodded, her eyes darkening. By day we wear feathers, chained to the sky and water. Only when night falls may we walk in our true forms. The sorceress Merelda holds us captive, her spell woven with moon and shadow. The other maidens lowered their heads, a silent chorus of sorrow. Kale clenched his fists. He had heard of Merelda, a name spoken in whispers in court, blamed for vanished travelers and withered fields. But he had never thought to meet her victims. Is there no way to break it? He pressed. Leora's gaze flickered to the lake. There is, but it is perilous. Only a vow of love, freely given and never betrayed, can undo her chains. But beware, Merelda thrives on trickery. If the vow is broken, even by deceit, we are hers forever. The weight of her words settled on him like armor. For reasons he could not name, Kale felt the tug of destiny. Something inside him whispered that he had not stumbled here by chance. Then I will return, he said firmly. If you will allow it. A faint smile touched her lips, though sorrow still lingered in her eyes. Come tomorrow night, if your heart wills it. The lake remembers all who walk its shores. The other maidens began to move again, forming a circle around her. Their voices rose in a soft lament, a song that seemed woven of wind and water. Feathers burst once more across their shoulders, wings unfurled, and with a sweep of white they took to the lake. Kale stood rooted, watching until the last ripple faded. Alone beneath the vast moon, he knew one thing for certain: his life had shifted. Duty, throne, and crown, all seemed distant now. For in the still waters of Moonlake, he had found a mystery worth more than kingdoms. The next day at the castle passed like a shadow. Courtiers fussed over Kale's future, offering names of princesses and noble houses, weaving politics as if lives were threads on a loom. Kale nodded politely, but his mind was far away. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the lake, the shimmer of feathers dissolving, and Leora's sorrowful smile. That night, when the moon climbed the sky, he returned. The forest welcomed him like an old friend, branches whispering, the air sharp with pine. The path seemed shorter, as though the lake itself pulled him nearer. When Kale reached the shore, the swans were already drifting across the glassy water. His chest tightened as he waited. And then, as before, feathers turned to flame, wings to gowns. The maidens stepped ashore, and at their center stood Leora. Her eyes found him at once, and though her face held reserve, Kale felt warmth kindle there, fragile but undeniable. You returned, she said. How could I not? Kale replied, stepping closer. Since last night, the castle has felt like a prison. Out there, I am a prince of rules and bargains. Here, I feel alive. Leora tilted her head, studying him. Danger lies in this place. Few wanderers leave unchanged. Why risk yourself for a tale you do not fully understand? Kale met her gaze steadily. Because your sorrow is not just a tale. It is real, and because no chains, whether of duty or sorcery, should hold a heart captive. For the first time, her lips curved into a true smile, faint, hesitant, but bright enough to make his chest ache. The other maidens, as though sensing her shift, withdrew toward the trees, giving them space. They walked together along the moonlit shore. Kale told her of his life in the palace, of lessons drilled into him since childhood, how to command, how to strategize, how to obey traditions that suffocated him. Leora listened intently, her expression soft. And you? He asked gently. What do you dream of, beyond this curse? She looked toward the water, where ripples shimmered under starlight. Freedom, she whispered, not just for myself, but for all of us. To wake with the sun and not feel feathers tear across our skin. To walk in the light of day without fear. To choose who we are. Her words stirred something in Kale. He had always dreamed of escaping his crown, of choosing a life unbound by rules. Now he realized her longing mirrored his own, but hers was steeped in pain far deeper. You deserve that, he said firmly. All of you do, and if it is within my power, I swear I will help you find it. Her eyes glistened with unspoken emotion, but she shook her head. Do not make promises lightly, Prince. Merelda is cunning. She will twist truth into falsehood, turn hope into ruin. A vow broken, even by trickery, is as deadly as betrayal itself. Kale's jaw tightened. Then I will not be tricked. And I will not betray you. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Leora reached out, her fingers brushing his hand, light as a feather, fleeting as a sigh. The touch sent fire through him, yet it was gone in an instant, as though she feared its weight. The maidens began to stir again, their song rising, gentle and sorrowful. Feathers shimmered across their shoulders. Leora stepped back, her form already shifting. Come again tomorrow, she whispered, her voice trembling like the surface of the lake. If your heart still leads you here. Kale nodded, watching as wings unfolded and the swans took flight over the silver water. Alone once more, he whispered to the night, my heart already belongs to you. On the third night, Kale's steps to Moon Lake carried a weight both heavy and thrilling. He had spent the day restless, ignoring courtiers' chatter and his mother's stern warnings about the upcoming betrothal feast. His thoughts belonged only to Leora, the way her sorrow brightened at the edges when she smiled, the way her voice wrapped itself around his heart like a vow waiting to be spoken. When he reached the clearing, the lake shone brighter than before, silver waves trembling beneath the rising moon. The swans descended gracefully, wings slicing the night air. In a burst of shimmering light, they became maidens once more. And there she was, Leora, radiant and fragile, as though made of starlight and longing. She stepped toward him, her gown whispering against the grass. You return again, Prince Kale, she said softly. Not as a prince, he answered. Only as a man who cannot stay away. Her lips parted slightly, as though his words startled her. The other maidens drifted back, their quiet song echoing through the trees, leaving Kale and Leora alone. They walked by the water's edge, speaking in hushed tones. Kale told her of his dreams, not of thrones or crowns, but of freedom, of finding a love that did not bow to duty. Leora, after long silence, confessed her own. I have feared to hope, she admitted, her eyes lowered. Hope is a fragile thing under Merelda's shadow. Each night I wonder if she watches, waiting to strike. Kale reached for her hand. This time, she did not pull away. Her fingers trembled in his, warm and uncertain. Then let her watch, he said fiercely. For tonight, I will speak the truth of my heart. Leora, I have never loved another, nor shall I ever. Before moon and earth, I vow, my heart is yours. No sorcery, no deception, no kingdoms can take that from me. The night seemed to hush at his words. Even the ripples of the lake stilled, as though listening. Leora's breath caught, her eyes glistening with tears that sparkled like dew. If you mean it, she whispered, then perhaps dawn will bring freedom. Kale lifted her hand to his lips, sealing his vow not with pomp or ceremony, but with the quiet strength of truth. I mean it, he said simply. The swan maidens gathered around them, their song rising into a lament that shifted, softening, brightening, carrying threads of hope through the night air. For the first time, Leora allowed herself to lean against him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. But far beyond the trees, in a tower of black stone veiled in shadow, another listened. Merelda, the enchantress traced her claw-like fingers over a crystal basin, in which the reflection of Moon Lake shimmered. Her lips curled into a smile sharp as broken glass. So, she murmured, her voice low and venomous. The boy has spoken the vow. How sweet, how foolish. She turned, and in the dim firelight, a second figure stood, her son, Selric. His face was pale, his eyes uncertain. You will help me, Merelda said coldly. The prince's heart is bound, but it can be tricked. Tomorrow, at his feast, you shall ensure it. The Swan Queen will be mine forever. Selric's jaw tightened. He said nothing, though unease flickered across his face. Still, he bowed. At Moon Lake, Kale and Leora parted as dawn crept over the horizon. Feathers shimmered across her shoulders once more, sorrow shadowing her joy. Remember, she warned, her voice thin with fear. If Merelda deceives you, if even by illusion your vow is misplaced, all will be lost. Kale clasped her hands tightly before she slipped away. I will not be deceived, he swore. But in the darkness beyond, Merelda's laughter rode the wind. The trap was already set. The great hall of Arendelle glittered with light. Chandeliers blazed with hundreds of candles, their flames mirrored in polished marble floors. Noble banners hung from the vaulted ceiling, and the air pulsed with music, laughter, and the perfume of 100 noble maidens, each eager to be noticed. Prince Kale sat upon the dais beside his mother, though his thoughts were not in the hall. He scanned the crowd again and again, searching for one face alone. Each princess paraded past him in silks and jewels, bowing, smiling, offering rehearsed words of charm. But his heart remained fixed on the lake, on moonlit shores, on Leora. The queen leaned close, her voice sharp beneath her smile. Do not shame us tonight, Kale. Choose wisely, and quickly. A kingdom waits upon your decision. Kale clenched his jaw. His decision was already made, but how could he speak it aloud without Leora by his side? Then, at the height of the feast, the trumpets blared. The hall doors opened, and 2 strangers entered. They were cloaked in black velvet, masks glittering with gems. Whispers rippled through the court, no one had announced their names. Yet they carried themselves with the grace of royalty. The woman stepped forward first, her gown shimmering like starlight spun into silk. She raised her mask, and the hall gasped. Kale's breath caught in his throat. It was Leora, at least, so it seemed. Her eyes shone with the same silver-blue depth, her hair cascaded like midnight rivers. Every curve of her face mirrored the swan maiden he loved. Joy and relief surged through him, washing away doubt. He rose to his feet, heart hammering. Leora, he whispered, but it was not Leora. It was Odette, Merelda's creation, her enchantress-born daughter, crafted as a perfect reflection of the Swan Queen. Beside her, Merelda herself stood cloaked and hidden, her lips curling in a smile no one else could see. Kale descended from the dais, eyes locked on the false Leora. You came, he said, voice trembling with emotion. Before all, I will speak what my heart already knows. The crowd hushed. Courtiers leaned forward. The queen's eyes shone with triumph, believing her son had finally chosen. Kale took Odette's hand, warm, real, indistinguishable from the one he had held at the lake. He lifted it high. My vow, he declared, voice carrying through the hall, is to you. You are my chosen, my beloved. Before heaven and earth, I name you my bride. The hall erupted in applause, cheers echoing like thunder. The queen raised her glass, courtiers shouted blessings. And at that moment, shadows split the air. Merelda cast off her cloak, her true form revealed, eyes burning like embers, hair a storm of black fire. Foolish boy, she cried, her laughter slicing through the joy. You have given your vow, not to your swan queen, but to my daughter Odette. By your own words, the curse is sealed. Leora is mine forever. The hall shook with gasps and cries of terror. Kale staggered back, horror crashing over him. No, no, it cannot be, he whispered, his voice breaking. Far away, at Moonlake, Leora felt the vow shatter like glass. Her cry rose into the night, filled with despair. Feathers burst across her shoulders, the curse tightening around her like iron chains. Back in the hall, Kale fell to his knees, rage and grief burning in his chest. He turned on Merelda, but she only laughed, her cloak billowing as she vanished into shadow with Odette at her side. The music was gone. The feast was broken. Kale stood, breath ragged, and shouted for his steed. There was only one place he could go, back to the lake, where Leora waited in sorrow. But in his heart, dread already whispered. He had been deceived, and perhaps it was already too late. The hooves of Kale's steed thundered through the forest, scattering leaves in his wake. His cloak whipped against wind, but he did not feel the cold. His chest burned with shame, rage, and desperation, each heartbeat echoing one word, Leora. The moon had risen by the time he reached the clearing of Moonlake. Silver light spread across the waters, but tonight the surface was restless, trembling with unease. The swans circled in frantic arcs, their wings beating like the sound of drums. Leora, Kale cried as he leapt from his horse. His voice broke across the clearing. From the lake's edge, she stepped forward, no longer radiant with fragile hope, but hollowed, her face pale, her eyes glistening with tears that had not yet fallen. Feathers rippled across her arms, more than ever before, as if the curse fed hungrily on her despair. "You swore," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of worlds. "You swore you could not be deceived." Kale fell to his knees in the grass. "Leora, it was not you. I swear it. She tricked me. She sent her likeness. I thought." His words broke into silence. Her eyes closed. When they opened again, sorrow had hardened into something colder. "Your vow was broken, Kale. The curse binds tighter. At dawn we may never return." He crawled closer, grasping her trembling hands, though feathers now prickled between his fingers. "Then I will fight it. I will fight her. Tell me how. Give me a chance to make this right." The other swan maidens gathered, their voices rising in a mournful song. It was not the hopeful melody of nights before, but a dirge that set Kale's teeth on edge. The trees themselves seemed to lean in, listening. Leora knelt with him, her face inches from his. "There is only one way, Kale. The curse was woven with a vow, it can only be broken with a vow stronger still. But such vows are not easily given. They demand blood, fire, sacrifice." He did not flinch. "Then I will give it. Whatever the cost." Before she could answer, the night split with a shriek of laughter. Merelda, the sorceress, emerged from the shadows beyond the trees, her black gown dragging like a storm across the earth. At her side stood Odette, her face still wearing Leora's likeness though her eyes glowed cruelly. Behind them, Selric lingered, his face troubled, his gaze fixed not on Kale but on the ground. "So touching," Merelda sneered, her voice like poison honey. "The boy who thought himself clever now grovels at a maiden's feet. But vows are not games, little prince. You gave yours to my daughter. Leora belongs to me." Kale rose, sword drawn in fury, the blade catching the moonlight. "Then I will cut you from this earth before I yield her to your chains." Merelda only laughed, raising her hand. Shadows writhed like serpents, striking toward him. Kale met them with steel, slashing light against dark. Sparks flew as the clearing filled with chaos. The cries of swans, the clash of magic and metal, the sorrowful song twisting into a battle hymn. Leora stood frozen, torn between despair and a flicker of something brighter, defiance. Her eyes darted to Selric, who shifted uneasily, his jaw tight. Unlike his mother and sister, no triumph gleamed in him, only conflict. "Merelda!" Kale shouted, his sword shattering one of the shadow serpents. "This ends with me. I will not fail her again." The sorceress's smile widened, cruel and certain. "Oh, my prince, it has only begun." The lake churned violently, its waters glowing with unnatural light. The curse was awakening, hungrier than ever. And dawn was only hours away. The clearing had become a battlefield. Shadows writhed like living creatures, lashing at Kale with fangs of smoke and flame. His sword flashed, a shard of silver against the night, cutting them down again and again, yet with every stroke new ones rose, summoned by Merelda's endless will. The swan maidens huddled together, their cries carrying through the storm. Leora alone stood at the lake's edge, feathers spreading across her skin as the curse deepened. Her form flickered between maiden and swan, as though time itself were tearing her apart. "Kale," she cried, her voice breaking. "Stop. Her magic feeds on the struggle." But Kale could not stop. Every strike, every block was not for his life, but for hers. His arms burned, his chest heaved, yet his gaze never left Leora's. Merelda's laughter rang like a bell of doom. "See how he dances, my swan. A prince who cannot save you, no matter how he bleeds." At her side, Odette clapped with mockery, her face still cruelly wearing Leora's likeness. "Mother, he fights like a cornered wolf. Perhaps we should let him live, on a leash." But Selric, quiet, pale, ever the shadow of his family, stood apart. His eyes followed Leora, not with hunger or cruelty, but with sorrow. He flinched at every lash of his mother's magic, every cry of the maidens. Kale, staggering, turned his fury on him. You, Selric, you're her blood. Is this what you want? To see her suffer forever? Selric's fists clenched. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. But in that silence, his gaze flickered toward Leora, soft, full of something Merelda had never known. Enough, mother, he said quietly. Merelda's head snapped toward him, her eyes burning. What did you say? Selric stepped forward, his voice shaking but stronger than Kale had ever heard. You twist vows, you bind hearts. But Leora was never yours. She is not a jewel for your crown, nor a weapon for your war. She is, his words caught in his throat, but the truth burned in his eyes. She is more than us. More than you. Merelda's face darkened with fury. Traitor. Her hand rose, black fire gathering in her palm. Selric did not move. His eyes met Leora's, and for the first time she saw him, truly saw him. The boy raised in shadows, but who had never stopped longing for the light. Leora's breath hitched. Selric? Kale seized the moment, driving his sword deep into the ground. The steel struck a root, and a spark of silver fire burst outward, as if the forest itself answered his defiance. Shadows recoiled, shrieking. Merelda staggered back, her spell shattering before it struck her son. The lake glowed brighter, moonlight streaming across its ripples. The curse pulsed like a living heart, and Leora cried out, clutching her chest. Kale, the vow, make it now. But Kale's hand bled from his grip on the sword, and exhaustion weighed like iron. He looked from Leora, half swan, half maiden, to Selric, who stood trembling, torn between his blood and his conscience. I cannot break it alone, Kale gasped. Not with steel, not even with love, it will take more. His eyes locked with Selric's. Help me. The words hung in the air, impossible, defiant, yet true. For the curse was no longer just Kale's battle. It was a war between two sons of light and shadow, bound to the same maiden by fate. Selric stepped forward, his hand trembling. He looked at Leora, then Kale, then at his mother's twisted face. And at last, he made his choice. I will, he whispered. The night held its breath. The forest fell silent, as though even the stars were waiting. Kale's sword burned faintly where it struck the ground, roots glowing silver beneath his hand. Beside him, Selric stood tall, pale with fear yet steadied by resolve. Merelda's eyes blazed with fury. My own son, turning against me? For what? For a cursed girl who will be feathers by dawn. Selric swallowed hard, but his voice was clear. Not cursed. Not a prize. Not yours. The air shivered. Leora gasped as light surged from the lake, threads of silver weaving around her. She staggered, feathers flickering, caught between freedom and final captivity. Kale grasped Selric's arm. Our vow must be stronger than hers. Stronger than her lies. Together. Selric met his gaze. Prince and sorcerer's son, opposites bound by the same truth. He nodded. Together. They turned toward Leora. Kale pressed his bleeding hand to his chest. Before heaven and earth, I swear my heart belongs to you, Leora. No shadow, no trick, no crown can change that. Selric raised his hand, dark veins glowing with light as if his defiance itself turned against his mother's magic. And I swear, not to bind you, not to claim you, but to set you free. Whatever it costs me. The vows merged, silver and shadow intertwining into a brilliant arc that struck the lake. The waters erupted, a column of moonlight soaring skyward. Merelda screamed, casting fire and storm to shatter it. But for the first time, her magic faltered. Her own son's vow had torn a hole in her spell, and Kale's love drove it wider. No, she shrieked, hurling everything she had, flames, claws of shadow, storms of black wind. Kale shielded Leora with his body. Selric stood firm, his arms spread as the curse's energy ripped at him. The ground trembled, the lake roared. For a moment, it seemed they would all be consumed. Then Leora stepped forward. Her hands, once trembling, now glowed with silver fire. She laid one upon Kale's back, the other upon Selric's arm. Her voice rang like a bell across the night. No chains can bind a heart that chooses love. No darkness can master a soul that chooses light. I am not yours, Merelda. I never was. Her words ignited the vows, and the moon itself seemed to descend. Light poured over them, shattering the shadows. Merelda screamed, her form twisting, unraveling, until she was nothing but smoke swept away by the dawn wind. Odeline vanished with her, her false face dissolving like mist. The silence after was vast, broken only by the rush of the lake. Then, slowly, feathers fell like snow. One by one, the swan maidens transformed fully into women, their wings dissolving into gowns of silver light. Leora stood whole at last, no feathers, no sorrow, only radiance. She looked at Kale, tears glimmering, and whispered, "You kept your vow." Kale fell to his knees before her, not as a prince but as a man in awe. "No, Leora, we did." He glanced at Selric, who stood trembling, exhausted, but alive. The young sorcerer looked away, ashamed. "You don't owe me thanks. I only did what I should have long ago." But Leora stepped forward, touching his cheek. "You chose differently. That is more than enough." The lake shimmered with peace. Dawn broke, spilling gold over the water. The curse was gone. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom rejoiced at the fall of Merelda's darkness. The Swan Maidens returned to their families, though many chose to remain by Moonlake, their prison turned sanctuary. As for Kale and Leora, they were wed beneath the open sky, swans circling overhead as though blessing the union. Bells rang across the land, not as command but as celebration. And Selric? He did not remain in shadow. Though he could not walk Kale's path, he chose his own, wandering, learning, seeking a way to heal what his family had broken. Yet he returned often to Moonlake, welcomed not as an enemy, but as a friend. On the night of their wedding, Kale whispered to Leora as they stood by the waters that had once been their curse, "My heart is yours, now and always." She smiled, resting her head against him. "And mine is free, because of you." The lake reflected their laughter, carrying it to the stars. And so, love triumphed, light endured, and they all stepped into a dawn unbroken.